Well, Resident Evil 0 wasn't quite the hot start I was hoping for when it came to this franchise review, but how will the game it's set directly before fare in comparison? Hey everyone, Kane from VividChim here, and today we are continuing our journey into the franchise that is Resident Evil. That's right, we've waded through the leech infested trains of RE0 and now it's time to take a look at the classic to see whether it lives up to the hype that's preceded it for all these years. So, does it? Well, let's find out as I ask Resident Evil. How bad can it be? The story of Resident Evil takes place on the 24th of July 1998 and follows the RPD's STARS Alpha team, who are now searching for the Bravo team after losing contact with them. See the Resident Evil 0 review by clicking the eye in the corner to find out more about them. After being attacked by some zombie dogs, pilot Brad Chicken Heart Vickers panics and flies away, leaving remaining members Chris Redfield, Jill Valentine, Albert Wesker and Barry Burton to run and take shelter in the abandoned Spencer Mansion. The game itself actually has two storylines for you to play through, one where you control Jill and one where you control Chris, both of which, while mostly the same, do have some small narrative differences. If they are mostly the same though, well, which one's the actual canon story? And the simple answer really is that neither of them are. But to get into why that is, I do have to dip into some spoilers here, so if you don't want any spoilers about this game, please skip to the time on screen right now, it'll take you straight past them. Resident Evil has multiple endings, but the best endings both characters can get end up with 3 characters escaping the mansion alive. The reason this isn't actually canon is that there are 4 confirmed survivors of the mansion incident, 6 if you include Wesker and Brad. Those 4 characters are Chris, Jill, Rebecca, and Barry. Now this is actually where the problem arises, as depending who you're playing, one of these characters won't even appear. For Jill, you can escape with Chris and Barry, but Rebecca won't ever appear in the game at all. Chris meanwhile escapes with Jill and Rebecca, whilst Barry is MIA and presumed dead from the start of the game. It's unusual to think that the very first game is kind of not canon in its own franchise. But then again, Resident Evil is a very weird series, so what can you say really? Overall, I liked playing as both Chris and Jill, and while the experience was very similar, I found that experiencing the opposite story was really fun when looking at the small differences they both had, even if they were minute. And of course, I could not bring up Resident Evil without its shining star: the voice acting. It feels like a really cheap B-movie with horrendous actors, but my God, do I love it. The way Resident Evil looks, even in this remake, is a little lackluster, and while it is an older remake than RE0, I found it to be pretty disappointing visually. Now that's not to say that everything was bad, the models looked fantastic for the most part, and felt like they were of the time and still hold up to this day pretty well, especially the bosses. I was really impressed by them. What doesn't hold up, though, is Resident Evil's backgrounds. This leads to something which really breaks the immersion in this game, with the backgrounds being so poor by comparison that all the items and models never seem like they fit right. They always seem extremely unnatural. This is the case across the board, but this puzzle room in particular is the biggest offender. Everything just looks terrible other than the actual interactable item. It was really disappointing. The audio is a lot more consistent in this game than some of the others, with yet another incredible save room theme. Expect to hear that a lot, by the way. I genuinely love the save room themes in Resident Evil. They are extremely chill. I've actually been listening to some of them whilst writing these scripts. I'm gonna put this out there right now. I really enjoyed this game in terms of how it plays. Of course I played on the alternate controls because I don't like the original controls, though I did actually test them out in RE1 as you can see on screen. The alternate controls aren't perfect, and the main reason for this is the fixed camera angles and how they change. Sometimes when moving between cameras, the controller input seems to glitch out a little bit and you start running in different directions. It gets really disorientating sometimes and can really mess up your sense of direction, but usually it isn't a problem problem, and in my opinion at least, is worth the more fluid movement. As we mentioned already, the game has two stories, but the differences do actually impact the gameplay, arguably more so than they impact the narrative. Jill is the easier of the two playthroughs, getting access to a grenade launcher, starting with a handgun, 2 extra inventory slots, and a lockpick. Not to mention that she can entirely skip a boss fight where Chris has to fight it. I naturally played both characters and beat the game twice, and I can definitely say that Jill was the easier experience, though Chris wasn't exactly difficult, just more tedious. This mainly comes down to the 2 extra slots that Jill gets. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but it genuinely goes a long way when it comes to inventory management. Those 2 slots could easily be used for puzzle items, heal items, ink ribbons, or even a weapon and its ammo. It stops you from running back and forth as much, and that really streamlines the experience, even though that I did actually beat the game faster as Chris. I also want to take a moment to talk about the puzzles in this game, which range from fun brain-tickling challenges to this one where it's very oddly specifically placing items to make an emblem. We also have the boss fights, which are mostly pretty simple, the hardest one being Plant 42 for Chris in my opinion, but other than that they are all pretty much simple shoot until it's dead scenarios, something which is actually very simple with the amount of ammo laying around on the normal difficulty. I'd actually argue that the hunters are more difficult than most of the bosses in this game just because of how damn quick they are. From a gameplay experience though, Resident Evil is a consistently great time that I had a lot more fun playing than I expected. The truth is, when I was looking at the RE games to review as a franchise, I honestly didn't expect to like any of the older games because I'm not a fan of their style. To be perfectly honest though, the original Resident Evil, or in this case the HD remake of it, more than lived up to its reputation, and whilst I did play on the newer alternate control scheme, I loved this. I thought the atmosphere was fantastic, graphical issues aside, it ran beautifully, and more importantly than that, it's literally just a B horror action movie in the form of a video game, campy acting and all. It's fantastic. For those who are a fan of horror, I could not recommend this game enough. Genuinely, go out and play it if you're a fan of horror, and experience why Resident Evil became the hit that it is. For more VividChim content, why not hit that subscribe button and the little bell to be notified as soon as a video drops. It goes a long way. We're actually close to 200 subs right now. If you want to hear more of my opinion in this game, why not head over to the VividChim Patreon right now. The How About Gonna Be extended podcast version of this episode is there, and I basically go into more detail that I couldn't cover in this shorter video. I've been Kane from VividChim, and I'll see you all soon.